the director of Starship Congress. Mike has been the Starship Congress is very much the brainchild of Mike, and his ideas and his approaches to how to bring this community together and how to communicate, how our various approaches amongst each other, I think have been an incredible asset to the interstellar community, to the space exploration community in general. And he's a dear friend and has become a very beloved person amongst the community, and we're really, really happy to introduce him, Mike Mongo, and who will be speaking to us next.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Mike Mongo, and I am the Strategic Director of Starship Congress. This is my first time on the mic at this summit, and I just want to say welcome to everybody to Starship Congress. I have a lot to talk about. Here is the challenge. It's that being Strategic Director of Starship Congress means that my time is absolutely occupied for the last 6 months. It just is nonstop. And right before I got up here, right before I stepped up here, my wife sent me a text, "Why is the water not on?" Like right before I got up here. And I'm just like, okay. I actually know the answer to that question, and I definitely should have stopped by, paid that bill before I got here. This is a true story. So here's the funny thing. Oh, by the way, I love this. Does anyone watch Stranger Things? Yeah. I didn't get a chance to use this in the messaging for Starship Congress. I couldn't figure a way to fit it in, though I loved it dearly. So this is my slide for my talk. I love this show. In my day-to-day life, what I do is I work with students. I work with all ranges of students. I work with students from even pre-K and all the way to post-grad. And that's every day. I get to work with students across the board. And I get to message with students, and I get to communicate with students. When I work with students, one of the things I've learned, most important thing, is it is okay to fail. And that's why I'm up here right now. That's what I'm going to talk about right now. I was at South by Southwest this year, and I did a talk, and I made a friend. His name's John Maida, and he taught me this, that failure, it's not about everything is not simple. That's what he said. Since we were putting on a conference about getting to the moon, returning to the moon, and I have many opinions. I have views about us going to the moon and us getting back to the moon. And it has to do with failure. And I don't have a challenge with failure. It's what's led to my success in life. When we went to the moon originally, because I work with kids, I have to pay attention to the messaging that I deliver to children all the time. Now here's a funny thing. When I'm talking with grown-ups, there's this very distinct there's this difference between talking with grown-ups and talking with students. It's absolutely 100% across the board. When I walk up here, the very first thing, when I walk up and I'm talking to a classroom of students, and it can be all the way up to college, the very first thing they say to me, can anyone imagine what the very first thing they say to me is? Anyone? How do you restrain yourself from asking that question? Because our natural inclination is, why are his glasses upside down? The funny thing is, what I get to explain to students why my glasses are upside down is because I get to work with grown-ups all the time. And grown-ups are always texting, and it's hard to get their attention, or they're looking at a magazine or a newspaper. And so if I walked in and my glasses were like this and I just started to talk, they would text, look up, and then go back down to what they were doing. But when I walk in like this, scientists look up, and then they do this. And then the students, this happens like so consistently, the students lean into each other, and they're just like, my mom does that all the time. My mom is always texting. I watch this process take place every single time. And when we as grown-ups are in that situation, isn't that funny how that we have unlearned that, like we just like, I want to ask that question. In fact, I will be in front of people regularly and having a conversation we just met, and they'll be looking at me, and I can see they're dying to ask while my glasses are upside down. And you have no idea what joy that fills me with. Because I want them to ask the question. Well, then the other thing that I explain to students is that it is actually very easy to get everyone's attention. The challenging thing is to have something to say that's worth hearing afterwards. When we originally went to the moon, so I'm about to talk about the people that were on the moon and who we're going to bring back to the moon next time we go. I've talked about this before. I put an essay out this year called "Are Women Allowed on the Moon?" And it was funny the responses I got. People who are not, and what it talks about is that the 12 people who have been on the moon, of the 12 people and 6 missions we sent to the moon, all the people who have been there have been men who are white. That's a problem. It's not that anything is wrong with men who are white. I have to come out to everybody on something. Last time I was at Starship Congress, I said to everybody, my name is Mike Mongo, I'm bisexual. I said this. And my wife, I'm openly bisexual. My wife is openly Pentecostal. It's like, it's a thing that we deal with. This time, I get to say, my name is Mike Mongo, and I'm white, and I'm male. I'm Mediterranean, I'm Greek Italian. I'm not mad at me. When I point this out, I do it so that we have an opportunity to do it a different way this next time. And yet, when I wrote this article about are women allowed on the moon, guess who got upset? It was not women. It was not people of color. It was not children. It was people who are self-described as men and white, and who thought that I was talking, I don't understand the whole process really, but I don't understand the process. But in talking about it, it opens up this opportunity. And the opportunity is not to argue, like we were wrong and we are bad and this. It's like, okay, so this is the way we did it this last time, and we can do it better this next time. This last time, in a way, that's failure. But people are afraid of failure. We don't like to think that we have failed in some way. We went to the moon, how was that a failure? Well, if the first person who walks on the moon is white and male, that's cool. If the second person who walks on the moon is white and male, that's not, but when the 12th person who walks on the moon happens to be, then I want you to know that to everybody who doesn't fit into that classification, doesn't think of themselves as that, it's like, what's in it for me? As a matter of fact, in this little essay, I pointed out that there was supposed to be 2 more Apollo missions. Most people know that. Imagine if one of those Apollo missions, before we decided that it wasn't worth it, we had announced, we're going to send a person who's a woman to the moon. I guarantee the funding would have been there. The excitement. We're going to send a person of color to the moon. So in communicating and how I learned all this dynamic, I wasn't really talking about we failed or we did it wrong and we're bad. I was talking about this next time. And part of the reason I talk about this is because when I'm engaging with students, when I'm talking in classrooms and I'm pointing out, if I showed a picture of the 12 people who walk on the moon and it was all the astronauts who have walked on the moon, it disenfranchises approximately 75% of the classroom. Because about half of every classroom is female. So this is, now imagine like 10, 11, 12. 10, 11, 12 is when we begin to imagine ourselves in roles. I'm going to be a fire person when I grow up. I'm going to be a telephone operator. I'm going to be a fireman. I'm going to be a congressman, like whatever we call it. I'm going to be this person. But if I show that, and I'm working to encourage students to go back to space and that tomorrow's jobs are in space, and I show this image, there is a message that is communicated, particularly when we do it repetitively. Bing, 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 bing. And we may not be conscious of it. But since my goal is to inspire students to go to space, I have to be conscious of it. Like, it's been my opportunity to be conscious of it. And there was a young woman, her name is Talia, she was 10, she's a 5th grader. There's a video online of this amazing moment. And I was talking with her and I was explaining about space and astronautics. And you know how astronauts walk on the moon? And she looked at me like I was a moron. Well, you know, like, there is an argument for that. And I was like, you know, how astronauts walk on the moon? And she said, no. This is 2 years ago. I'm like, you know, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin? No. You don't know who? Sally Ride? No. International Space Station? I mean, the video, you can see her face. She's just telling, like, what are you talking about? That face that kids give you? Like, what? And so then I show her the first person walking on the moon, which is an astronaut suit. So it's just an astronaut in a suit, but it's obviously a human being. And her face, her very first thing she says, instantaneously, that's not real. This is 2 years ago. She's 10 and she's in 5th grade. And then in the video, you can watch, she says it 4 times. She has to turn to her grandmother. Is that real? And her grandmother says, yes. Okay, so I'm blown away right now. I'm just like, what is happening? And I said, have you ever seen an astronaut? No. This moment that is about to take place is such an amazing opportunity moment. It happens to all of us. This is your moment. This is the moment when we as grown-ups lead the way. And so the very first astronaut that I showed, 10-year-old Talia, who I know because she won a spelling bee, and I get to mentor with her on occasion, like with these students all over the world that I get to mentor with now. The very first astronaut that I show her is an astronaut that looks like her. It's an astronaut who's female, and it's an astronaut who's black. Her name is Mae Jemison. And I show her floating in the International Space Station. And on camera, this is what happens. She's slouching watching the YouTube video. She's slouching watching the YouTube video. She sees Mae Jemison, and she does this. She's absolutely unconscious of it. Now, I want you to know that though I was recording it, I was just recording it to ask some science questions. It was going to be used for something else. I just happened to catch this moment. And as this is happening, I don't know what is taking place until I see it later, but I'm praying to whatever deity, God, good, everything, please let the phone be recording. And so I go back to, and then she does this thing, and then I show her Commander Hadfield with the wringing out water. Have you seen that? Where he wrings out water at the International Space Station and the way the water behaves and the things just float around. She had never seen anything float in space. She's like, what? You can see, she double takes, which is just, for me, Super Mario points. Ching, 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 ching. And then the whole thing starts with, she doesn't like science, it's boring to her. And here, I'm like, science is boring? How is that even humanly possible? Like, how can science be boring to a 10-year-old? Blow something up. And we finish it up. I said, thank you very much. I mean, I'm honored. I'm like, thank you very much. And she goes, thank you. Like, that was cool. I'm like, it was cool. And then I go back to my car. She goes with her grandmother, takes off, and we're just sitting in a park, just really casual setting. And then I sit in the car, and I mean, wow, cry. Like, I cried so, I was like, there's two reasons I cried. Woo, getting choked up now. One, I got to show 10-year-old Talia her first astronaut, and it was a person that looked like her. Like, I got to do that, and she now knows she can be an astronaut, and that is important for us. That's important for our interests here. Hold on, wait. The next, and that was the first reason I cried, but the second reason I cried, and this is the killer, is that I showed a 10-year-old person that we had been on the moon, and she didn't know it. Have we done anything more amazing than that? I mean, besides love one another. I'm proud of us for doing that. But have we done anything more amazing than sending human beings to the moon? Did you see that movie Interstellar? When they have that moment where the guy says about going to the moon and the teacher says, oh, we never went to the moon, that was just Cold War propaganda? I mean, like, I'm watching it take place. She had no idea. She asked, is an astronaut real? And it hit me. And that is a failure. That's our failure. We always talk about, I mentioned this once before, we talk about kids young people using smartphones and smart devices and these sort of things. But those are the tools we put in their hands. In the same way that the people, when we grew up, those grown-ups put the tools that made us a success in their hands. So if we're putting these amazing devices in their hands, we have to show them how to be successes with it. I'm a giant video game person, worked on video games, play video games. I paid for a year in Greece by co-writing NBA Slam & Jam 95 for esports, for Capcom esports. And when I see a student locked in on video games and not doing anything else when they have the most amazing intelligence in the world in their pocket, I stop, and I make a moment with them. And I show them what power that they have at their, and it does not take a lot to show a person how to wield Google. Because all of these, it makes all of us superheroes. And it's our job, where we can turn failure into success is by every single one of us has children in our lives. They're around us. We're space science professionals. It's our job to say, oh, trust me, if you bump into a fifth grader and say something about, who's your favorite astronaut? And they're like, what's an astronaut? It's going to change your life. And it may change theirs. And if it changes their life, it may change our lives, and it may change the future of humankind. We have to take our failures and not be mad at them. We just own them. We're like, yeah, you know what? We sent 12 people to the moon, and they're all really, if you want to get down to brass tacks, male, white, slim, presumably straight, definitely American, and that's that group. And so that may have been a failure, okay? We can own that. It doesn't harm anyone to say that because we want everybody to go to space. We don't have to argue that it was bad. We can have a conversation. A lot of times when I'm having these conversations, people want to argue. I don't want to argue. I'm looking to have a conversation. I'm not mad at me. I'm not mad at you. And if we have a conversation, it has been my experience that conversation leads to success. It's only when conversation is shut down, it says speak truth to power. And this is power right here. I love to be not the smartest person in the room. I love to be in the room where everybody else is smarter than me. I'm in that room right now. That's the best. And I get to brag about it later. And when so that essay that I talked about, a peer contacted our organization and said, Mike Mongo is a bigot and a racist and needs to be censored. You need to get him off of the board. You need to get rid of him. For even having a conversation. If you read the essay, it's just like, it's great that we send everybody to the moon. That's the whole, so there could be a different take on that. Fight the power, down with man, down with, Gil Scott-Heron's Whitey's on the Moon
always drives me crazy. But I get it. Like if somebody can't get food, then how can we send people to the moon and validate that? Unless we can explain, and this is my contention, that by going to the moon and by succeeding in space, we can make the future better for everybody. Like we can solve for every challenge we face on Earth today by solving for space. We can solve for energy, we can solve for health, we can solve for sustainability, we can solve for inclusion, we can solve for diversity, we can solve for even the illusion of scarcity. Scarcity is the biggest, like, what? What do you mean scarce? Like David was talking about asteroids and all the metals that one meager asteroid has. There's no scarceness in this universe. Human beings might be scarce, but we can do something about that. But everything else, I think Titan is covered with petroleum, some crazy thing like that if you're so obsessed with oil. But we don't have scarcity, so we can solve for the illusion of scarcity by going to space. And that is why I'm saying it's important. In the very least, the reason that space is for everybody is because the best kind of party has everybody. Even, like I'm at a party or I'm here at a space conference and we'll be out there having a coffee and we start talking about Donald Trump and we're gonna argue. Is that bad? I don't like to argue, but we might argue about Donald Trump. Isn't that fun? I think because we're engaging. It's all right. And we can then know something about each other. Mike's this way and he's that way or she's that way. And that's okay. That's a great party. I've been to those parties where you have a really good argument. But I've also been in a party where everybody is just like, yeah, Starship, Starship, yeah, everybody's awesome. Yeah. So that's the whole thing. When we go back to the moon, when I'm talking with NASA, as I do now, about sending kids to space, as I do now, and they ask me, this is the best, they said, how do we get kids interested in space like what they used to be interested in space? How do we do that? And I love this. 2 words. Space, Quidditch. Boom. There's actually people in here like, what's Quidditch? I can see the expressions. Or this one, if I really want to, like, Quidditch is kind of yesterday-y. All the kids read the Harry Potter book still. But if I say, cha-cha-cha-cha-cha, big money, Mike Mongo, superhero, space, Minecraft. I'm like a deity. They're like, he is the greatest. I vote for him for president of the universe. Thank you, my 10-year-old people. And those are our opportunities. That's how we're going to make this happen. That's how we tie kids into this. And by getting kids to space, we send 1 kid to space, and guess how many kids on this planet want to go to space? All of them. So here's a plan. We don't send 1, we send 6. We just pick 6 different kids, and we put them up there, and it can't be golden ticket. They got to show that they've got drive and initiative because we want to communicate that these have values. Get out there and do this thing. I tell kids, tell people that you want to be a space football player. And space football player, because there's approximately 2,000 football player jobs in the US, professional football player. But if I'm in a classroom and I say, how many students here want to play professional football when they grow up? About half the hands go up. So I then explain that there are approximately, because I did the math, 175,000 fifth graders that want, or sixth graders that want to play professional football just like you. 175,000 for sure. And that's just fifth graders. There's also sixth graders, seventh graders, eighth graders, ninth graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, 12th graders, college students, and post-college students who are still thinking about playing pro football. So you're in competition with that group. Think about how many people you got to fight with to get through that door. So instead of that, here's what I want you to do. Sixth grader, tell everybody that you want to be the first professional space football player. Because there isn't one, and if you walk around and tell people that you want to do this, I explain to people the value of being a space plumber. Remember the story about the water, how I didn't pay the water bill? I mean, like, have anybody had their toilet explode in the middle of the night? Me. So why, you think my wife is just turning to me and saying, we'll get to it in the morning. No, she is not. She is saying, Mike, here's what she's saying, Mike. And I say, what? She goes, what's wrong with you? Because I wake up like, I'm being killed. And she goes, the toilet's overflowing. Which is a thing that you're like, okay. So then you wake up, you're like, ugh. And I explain this to kids. Then you have to get a plumber at that hour. And you know how much a plumber costs at 2 o'clock in the morning? It can be $200 an hour. It can be, depending on where you live. I explain to students that at McDonald's they pay $10 an hour, and you still have to clean up bathrooms. But if you're a plumber, which you don't even have to go to school for, you just find a plumber who likes you and they'll train you, you can make $35, $45, $55, $65, $75 an hour without even thinking about it. So I said, if you're making $50, $60 an hour as a plumber, think how much you'll make being a space plumber. A space plumber. If you're making $75 an hour on Earth as a regular plumber, if you're in space and the toilet explodes and stuff starts floating around, and the kids just, I got it. And then I explain how this actually has happened to us in space before, like in some of the earlier missions, and then I explain about all these things and make them think about other things besides the obvious fun stuff of space. There's practical things about space. And if you can imagine a role for yourself in space today, right now, at this generation, if you're 10, 11, or 12, you can pretty much do that thing. I was like, any job you can imagine in space, you can probably do it. Anything you can do on Earth, you're probably going to be able to do in space. To which a young person said to me, like this, because they immediately, not like us, kids are like, what about space equestrian? I'm like, okay, all right, let's figure this out. So centripetal motion, and then we'll have the horse run on the inside of the track, and then it's like, yes, we can do it. But you have to tell people, and this is how I empower them. I want you to go around and do the same thing. You have to tell them, you have to tell people that you're going to be the first space equestrian. Now, most kids, by the grace of God, do not want to be equestrians. They want to be plumbers, or they want to be doctors, doctor's a big one, nurses. And then you can say for sure, you can be a space doctor. You can be a space nurse. You can be a space, YouTuber is like really, YouTuber is, you don't know this, but that is a real job. That's like, kids are like, I want to be a YouTuber. Like, okay, Scott Manley's here, he's a YouTuber. And so these are the things, whatever you do, how about this one? Space lawyer. Oh, I know, right? God, no, really, we all love lawyers. We do. We love them. And so we need space lawyers. And it's funny because kids, when they tell me they want to be lawyers, when a kid tells me they want to be lawyer, when a kid tells you they want to be a lawyer, like, of all the things in the world, like, are you a budding supervillain? What's going on with you? And they're like, but you know why kids want to be a lawyer? Why? Money. And that's when it leads into explaining about plumbing. Because I know tons of plumbers who make a lot more than lawyers. And lawyers have to work really hard for a long time to get to that making almost as much as a plumber status. So, failure is great. Don't be mad that we failed. Be happy to discuss how we can succeed. And everybody here, when you're around your students, make sure they're thinking about tomorrow's jobs in space. That's my message for today. Thank you. Oh, here's a great thing. What's your name?
Repeat the question, please, Mike.
Yes. What was your name? Al. Okay. Al said, when you look around this room, you see that things have not changed much since Apollo days. I got to tell you the greatest thing. Okay, so I get overjoyed really easy. I'm looking around this room right now, and I'm seeing the craziest degree of diversity. Just really, compared to, I go to space science conferences, and and in the past, like I wrote to the Space Frontier Foundation 3 years ago. I literally wrote, are women allowed at your conference? Because they had 30 people listed, and at that time, they had no people who are women. Like, what's going on over there? Like, I know there's a certain group in Key West who'd be really all about your party. And I live in Key West. So, and calling them on it led to what is happening at Space Science Frontier Foundation now. Look at this year's. Look what they did. What they did was they thought about it. All it takes is thinking about it. It's like, is this group that we're putting together homogenous? That's it. It's no big deal. Like, there's certain people I want to speak for sure. And if you're a genius and you happen to be this or that, that's great. There's somebody that I really want to hear what they have to say, that's great. And then the rest of it, because there's a lot to fill in with a conference, you just put in some effort. We think about it. We're like, wow, that would be cool. Let's look around. Let's go further. Let's put the word out. I'm also on the board of the Students for Exploration and Development of Space. Now here's the funny thing. We grown-ups, 52 and older, I'm 52, get hung up thinking about things like diversity. But at the Students for Exploration and Development of Space, who are all college students, is a college-led organization, they talk about diversity, and they don't even they have a group working on encouraging diversity in the organization, which is like 2,000 students in the U.S. They have a chair that goes out and helps to build SEDS groups, chapters at historically black colleges and universities. They have another chair that works on encouraging diversity in careers, because we don't think of, people get hung up on the word diversity, but we have to have, as Andreas pointed out, we have to have artists too. And it makes for a great party to have artists there, trust me. I mean, engineers are cool and everything. Engineers for a lot of times at space science conferences, diverse means we don't just have engineers, we also have physicists. Am I wrong? It's a real thing. And so and here's another thing, don't be afraid to fail. A failure Starship Congress, I'll give you one. Failure. We worked really hard to make arrangements for people who are hearing impaired, and we failed. We failed. I worked all day yesterday. Andreas doesn't know this. I contacted state and federal organizations, help me. Because people have hearing impairment who we don't even, we don't acknowledge hearing impairment as a thing. But sometimes my mic goes away from here and people can't hear me. We as young people don't even think about hearing impairment often unless they're hearing impaired. Here's a thing, Tiffany Frierson, Warp Drive scientist, we did our Kickstarter video in sign. We didn't have any speaking in it, it was all sign. People are like, oh, that's not gonna work. Well, but the thing is that Tiffany isn't here right now because last night she was in Arizona, in Phoenix, and American Airlines couldn't figure out how to communicate with a person who's deaf to get them a hotel room. This particular moment that I'm sharing with you reminds me of the Avengers movie where Captain America turns to Hulk and he says, don't you need to get angry? And then Bruce Banner turns to Captain America and says, that's my secret, I'm always angry. I save that anger for moments when American Airlines can't get a hotel room for one person on their plane who happens to be deaf, and so she was left at the airport because there's nobody to communicate with her. I'm having a larger conversation with American Airlines about that. That's a failure. We failed. American Airlines failed. And then I don't hold them down and choke them out and extinguish them. I work to encourage them and help them succeed. Yes, I walk in a little heated, miffed, that somebody very important to me got sidetracked like that. But then I'm working on a constructive engagement. So I let go of the chip that's on my shoulder and become the bigger person because I want to show how to do it. I have to say it to both sides. We only get there together. We can't do it one or the other. Great question, Al. Thank you. Is there any other questions? Michael.
Just as a follow-up to that, regarding whether things have changed since Apollo
The 2013 Apollo class, a NASA class of astronauts, 50% women, which is like the planet, 50%. Yeah, so like just, that's cool, it's super great. We did good, keep up the good work, that's how we do it. And then we say, keep up the good work. I mean, do you want to be on a planet where everybody is the same? People like me drive me crazy. All right, anybody else? We got a long conference. Here we go. Next. Thank you.